Jason, aka Jay Scott. Welcome to the Financial Freedom Fast podcast. What is going on, my man?
How's it going, Matt? Thanks for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Yeah, man, I'm thrilled to have you on, man. Honestly, years back when I first started my real estate journey, you wrote or co-authored all of the books that got me to where I am today, man. You've got estimating rehab costs, book on flipping houses, negotiating real estate. What else? Recession proof real estate investing. A bunch. I think there's one more in there that I might
Yeah, the
be
new one, the best one, real estate by the numbers.
by the numbers. By the numbers, man. You've got all the books, all the knowledge. How did you do that? Like, how have you created your investments, your books, everything you've built in your life? What is it? What does this look like for you right now?
So for me, it's really just I like to learn. I'm never, whatever I'm doing, I get bored easily. And
Mm,
so I'm always trying to figure out what's the next thing in my evolution. I don't like to necessarily jump from shiny object to shiny object, but I like to progress. And so whatever I'm doing today, I'm always asking myself, what's the next iteration of today look like? What does tomorrow look like? How do I can do bigger or more or better? And so for me, it's really every day is doing what I need to do, but also spending time figuring out what tomorrow and the next day and next month and next year and 5 years from now is going to look like.
So, what do the next month and year and 5 years look like? Are you writing more books? Are you buying more deals? What does that look like for you?
So I'm sure at some point I'll write another book. I spent 5 years on the last one, just came out a few months ago, and I need a break. I'm not a natural writer. Like every time I finish a book, I'm thinking, oh, I can never do this again. And I'm about 6 months out from finishing the last one, and I'm finally getting around to thinking, yeah, maybe I will. So who knows? Maybe a few months or a year from now, I'll work on another one. But for me, it's these days just doing bigger and bigger deals. So I
Mm,
flipped single family houses and held single family rentals for a decade before I started moving into multifamily and apartment complexes. And the big thing I've realized over the last couple of years is that doing big deals isn't much harder, if at all harder, than doing small deals. And
right,
while I used to think, doing $100 million deal is for other people, or doing $1 billion deal is something I'll never do, what I'm
right.
really realizing is that there's no reason why normal average people can't do 5, 10, 50, 100 million, $500 million deals.
I love that. And we aligned on this before the show here. We're going to kick the show off with one of the questions that I asked towards the end of the podcast. And it's, what is the fastest way, if you're starting today, let's say you're 24 years old, you've got no assets right now, you're making $70,000 a year at your W-2 job. What is the fastest way to get to $10,000 a month in passive?
Just go out and learn how to raise money and learn how to, and I know this is all, it sounds like I'm making it sound easier than it is. It's not
Right.
easy, but it's not rocket science. We can talk about how to do it. But
Right.
basically, learn how to raise money, align yourself with people that know how to do big deals, and go out and get yourself a spot on somebody else's team being part of some big deals. When I say big deals, I'm talking about 5, 10, 20, $50 million deals, because we think that there
Mm,
aren't a lot of those. But now that I'm doing those deals, I realize there's literally dozens, if not hundreds of people out there that are normal people like you and me doing these types of deals. And so anybody that's listening to this right now could be part of a team doing a 20 or $50 million deal next month. And you're not gonna make all the money. You're gonna be part of a team, and you're gonna take a piece of the deal. But if a deal earns 3, 4, $5 million, and you have 5, 10, 15% of the deal, you're making your $500,000. Do that once or twice a year, and you're racking up a few $1 million in no time.
But Jay, I am so young and I don't know anything about real estate. What am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to do this stuff? What's the next step for me?
The next step is to find somebody who's doing it and going to that person and saying, let me volunteer my time to help
Mm,
you do whatever you're doing. let me volunteer and offer my time, my energy, my expertise, my knowledge, my, if you have a little bit of money, my Rolodex, whatever it is you have to offer.
Mm,
Maybe your day job, you build web pages. Great. Go and say, hey, I'll build all your web pages for you. Maybe in your day job, you do marketing. Say, hey, let me do all your marketing for you. Whatever it is, just find something that can add value to somebody that's doing something you want to do. Go up
mm,
to them and say, hey, let me do this for you. All I ask in return is you let me follow you around for a year. Let me
mm.
learn from you. Let me be part of the group that's doing this deal so I can learn. And then if I actually add value, you can start paying me or giving me equity or whatever it is.
So you want to create $10,000 of passive income a month. You could realistically get that done with one big deal if you own a portion of that deal. How do
Well,
you find
what's $10,000 a month? How much is that a year?
that's $120,000 a year?
$120,000 a year. How much can you make? What types of returns do you think you can generate on an investment deal that you do? Give me a number.
Let's call it 22%.
22%. How much money do you need to have that 22% a year of that amount is going to be $120,000?
What is that? A little over 500,000?
Yeah, somewhere between five and $600,000. So
Yeah.
basically, what you're saying is, for you to have $10,000 a month in passive income, you need five to $600,000. There is
Mm.
no doubt in my mind that anybody listening to this, if they're willing to put in the time and the effort, can generate five or $600,000 in the next year or two doing a big deal by partnering with somebody else or becoming part of somebody else's team. Zero doubt in my mind. Anybody out there.
That makes a ton of sense, and even if you're only getting, so let's say you need to generate that 550 to put that in and make 22%. 22% is a solid return, so let's call it 10%, right?
100%.
If 10%, yeah, so you need $1,000,000 to make 10K a month,
Yep.
and maybe you're not the one that's bringing that $1,000,000 to the table. You're gonna go find someone to bring that $1,000,000 to the table, so maybe you only get 25% of the deal because you go out and raise all the money. Maybe you do the management on the deal. So if you find 4 million, then you're making your 10K if you're getting 25% of each of those deals. I love that, and I never really heard people look at it from a return on capital that you're putting in from a monthly cash flow standpoint.
So the first big deal that I did, and I did exactly what I'm telling other people to do. I found somebody that was investing in apartment complexes. She was really good at it. She'd been doing it for a while. I really trusted her, and I went to her and I said, "Look, let me just volunteer my time for a year, and
Mm,
whatever you need from me, I'll do whatever you want. All I ask in return is just let me follow you around for a year and learn the business of investing in apartment complexes." And she said,
mm,
"Okay." And so, literally 9 months later, we found a deal that I was part of. She said, "Hey, I'm going to give you a piece of the deal. You come in. I want you to help with the underwriting because I had learned how to do that. I want you to help with the
mm,
due diligence because I had learned how to do that. I want you to help with the capital raising because I knew some people that had money." And she said, "Just help out in a few different areas." The value of this deal, this was a deal that would have generated or was going to generate about $4 million in profit.
mm.
Literally, if I would have gotten 10% of the deal for the work I put in, I would have made $400,000 on that deal. If I got 20% of the deal, I make 800,000. 25%, I make $1 million. And so that was the first deal we did together. And she gave me a piece of the deal for doing the work. And then after that, she said, "Let's keep doing this." And so we did another deal together and another deal together. And now we're partners. And now
Mm.
each deal that's generating three, four, $5 million, I'm taking a third to a half. And
Mm.
so that's basically how I got started. Anybody could have done the same exact thing. So that's the nice thing about these deals, that they're generating so much profit that you don't need to make a big percentage of it to do really well.
What skills do people need to build to be able to leverage themselves in with just their knowledge and expertise?
Yeah, so there are a few different areas for these types of deals. If you're looking at large commercial deals, if you're looking to do syndication, where it's basically you're bringing in investors and other people's money to do these deals, there's a few areas where you can really excel and provide value to other people. Number one is the ability to find deals. So maybe you
Mm,
know how to like build relationships with brokers, and you know about certain areas, and basically you get deal flow.
mm,
So I know people full time, all they do is they've got one or two or three cities where they know all the big commercial brokers and they're just getting deals sent to them day and night, and they're just basically underwriting the deals, looking at these deals, and anything that's good, they're basically passing on to the team that they're working with. And that's all they do is they look for deals. And you find a good deal and you could get 10% of the profit on the deal. A lot of teams I know, our team included, you bring us a deal that we end up buying, we'll give you 10% of the deal, or we'll hand you $100,000. It's that easy. And then you go out and you find the next one. So that's one piece, knowing how to find the deals. Number two, being able to, if you're good with computers and underwriting and spreadsheets, you know how to underwrite the deals. So basically, you can take all the financial information, you can take the income, you can take the expenses, put that in a spreadsheet, and really know how to analyze that information. You can become an underwriter. And again, we have people on our team that get a percentage of the deal because all they do is they spend their days underwriting. They're really good at taking the numbers from a deal and determining if it's going to work.
Mm,
So you can be an underwriter. You could be a capital raiser. And this is a little bit nuanced. You can't necessarily get paid just to raise capital, but maybe you have a network of high net worth people that you know, doctors or lawyers or athletes or tech people,
right.
whatever it is, and they trust you. And if you go to them and say, hey, I've got a deal, will you put money into the deal? They will. You can raise money and you can get paid. In some ways, you can get paid as somebody that can bring money to the deal.
Right.
Maybe you're really good at managing properties. Maybe you're good at, you figure out how to renovate a big property. You know how to run a construction team. You know how to manage a general contractor. You know how to manage the property management company. But you're good on the back end of taking the property that was just bought and figuring out how to turn it around and make it operate really efficiently. You
Mm,
get paid 30 or 40% of a deal to do
mm,
that because that's a huge part of a deal being successful. So if you can do any of these things, and there are a whole bunch of other things that you can be good at, but all you have to do is get good at one of these things: finding deals or
right.
underwriting deals or raising money or operating deals. If you can do any of those things well, you're going to find a place where your skills are needed.
Right. And this kind of goes full circle to what we were talking about in the beginning. You can start with someone, ask them where they need help, just offer to work for them, learn skills from them, and you can use that opportunity to work as working with one of these big guys to learn one of these skills. And then when you learn one of these skills, you can use that as leverage to get yourself into one of these deals. A personal story for myself is I was good at finding deals and talking to people and managing properties. So I got myself, these aren't huge deals, but I got myself into a $1.25 million building for no money out of my own pocket. I own 50% of that building. And all I had to do was one, find the deal, and then two, stabilize and manage the property. And because of that expertise that I brought to the table, I was able to get these deals with no money out of my pocket. And now it's just like, how can I scale that up? How can I make that bigger? And I think you hit the nail on the head. Just go big from the beginning. If you don't start small, you're never going to be scared to go big.
Yeah, it's so true. And here's the thing: you mentioned no money out of pocket. I have so many people that come to me and they say, I can't do the big deals because I can't even afford to do the small deals. How am I going to afford to do the big deals? Well, here's the thing that I found: if you're going to go buy $100,000 rental property, there's almost zero chance you're going to be able to buy $100,000 rental property with zero money out of your pocket. You're
Right.
going to bring money to do the inspections. You're going to have to bring money for the appraisal. You're going to have to bring money to do the down payment. You're going to have to bring money for the closing costs, whatever it is. You're going to have to bring at least 10 or 20 or $30,000 if you want to buy $100,000. You want to buy $100 million property, it's almost certain that you don't need to bring a single penny, because when you're doing a deal that big, you bring in partners who have money and you give them a piece of the deal in return for them putting up the money. And there
Right.
are plenty of people out there that they do this professionally. They put up money for these big deals in return, in exchange for a piece of the equity, a piece of the deal. You can't do that for $100,000 property. Nobody's going to put up $20,000 in a deal for 20% or 10% of a rental property. Nobody cares.
Right.
It's just not big enough. But again, $100 million deal, you don't have to put in a penny of your own money and you can get those deals done.
What size of deals are you working on now with this partner of yours? Are you going after these 100 mil, 50 mil, 10 mil, 200 mil? What's your target look like?
So the last four deals we've done have been between 15 and 50 million. So
50.
that in that sweet spot, and we'd be happy to go bigger if we found something bigger. We'd probably go a little bit smaller if we found something smaller. But for us, that sweet spot in the 15 to 50 range has been really good to us.
And this is commercial residential?
Yeah, this is multifamily. These are 150 to 400 unit apartment complex.
And what is your main role with this partnership now?
Yeah, basically, my partner and I have split the company in half in terms of role. So
Mm,
she's responsible for everything related to finding the deal and managing the deals.
mm,
I'm responsible for everything related to raising the money and running the company. So everything from the legal, compliance, not operations, but HR and accounting and all of those things. Basically all the things we need to keep the business running. So she does the day-to-day on the ground stuff for the properties. I raise the money and keep the company running, and that's how we split things up.
and are you who's doing the underwriting?
So I have people on my team that do the underwriting.
From underwriting small deals to underwriting bigger deals. You wrote the book Real Estate by the Numbers. What do you think numbers bring for you in a deal? Because I'm a firm believer that if you know your numbers, whether it's small real estate or big real estate, if you know your numbers and the numbers look good, then you can have confidence in a deal. When you have confidence in a deal, you have confidence to go raise capital to buy that deal. What's your feeling on knowing your numbers? How can you be more confident in your numbers?
Really is just practice. And so you have to start with a good methodology. You have to start with a good underwriting model. If you're going to do a small deal, a simple spreadsheet can help you determine if a deal is going to be good. But you have to know that the numbers that you're putting into the model
Mm,
make sense. It's not so much I can give you a million different spreadsheets that tell you if a flip property or rental property is any good. I can give you a dozen spreadsheets that tell you, bigger spreadsheets that tell you if a self storage complex or an apartment complex are good. The models are a dime a dozen. You can go out and find them on the internet or buy one for $50 that you just plug your numbers into. The important thing is ensuring that the numbers that you're plugging in are correct. And that's where I see most people
mm,
making mistakes. They make assumptions. They say, I don't really know how much my insurance is going to be because I've never bought a property in that area. So I'm just going to assume that I'm going to pay $600 per unit in insurance, or I'm going to pay
mm,
$1,200 next year for insurance. But they have no idea. They're just guessing. Somebody who's doing it the smart way is going to call an insurance agent or call a property management company or call another investor in their area who's doing the same type of property and say, hey, how much am I going to pay for insurance? And it's easy to figure out you need to plug in a number for insurance. The hard part is actually making sure that number's right. When we do bigger deals, there are just a whole lot more numbers that you have to plug in, a whole
mm.
lot more assumptions that you have to make. And so it's that much more important that every time you make an assumption or plug in a number, that you have the best data available so that whatever gets spit out of that model is most likely or more likely to be correct.
And there's a bunch of different costs too when you're doing these bigger deals that aren't involved in a lot of these smaller deals. You may have lawn maintenance, or what are the different costs that come in once you start doing these huge deals? If we compare it to a small multifamily property, right? You have a 2 unit, you're going to want to factor in your utilities, you want to factor in vacancies, repairs, maintenance. That's basically you have your obviously your taxes, mortgage, insurance, all of your PITI all included in there. What changes when we go up to that $50 million deal?
Yeah, so when you get up into the bigger deals, you start to see the things that are more related to things like payroll. For example, for a rental property or a duplex or even a fourplex, you're going to hire a property management company. And if they get a phone call to show the property or if they get a phone call about a maintenance issue, they'll send somebody out or they'll schedule an appointment. But if you have an apartment complex, you need people on site pretty much 9 to 5 all day waiting for people to walk in
Mm,
to want to lease the property. So you have to pay employees, full-time employees who are sitting at that property, sitting in that leasing office from 9 to 5.
mm,
Likewise, if you have a 100 or 200 or 300 unit property, you're going to have enough maintenance issues that you're going to want a full-time maintenance person. You might want multiple full-time maintenance people. Might want maintenance people who basically have apartments in the complex that are on call. There's going to be payroll costs there. Then you're going to have things like professional services. So, for example, for your single family house, you're probably going to have the city come pick up your trash. But for an apartment complex, you might have to pay a private company to come pick up
Mm.
your trash. You might have to pay a private company to do deliveries of whatever it is that you might need. You might need to pay a private company to do clearing of snow or ice during storms. Obviously, you're going to have to pay private companies to come and do lawn maintenance and tree trimming and all of those things. And a lot of things that you're not going to have to pay for when you have a single family house that you have to
Mm.
start thinking about. But again, it's not rocket science. You can get a list of these things that you're typically going to see. And yeah, it takes more time because it's more numbers that you have to plug in and you have to verify those numbers and figure out what those numbers are. But at the end of the day, it's you have a bunch of income, you have a
Right.
bunch of expenses, and you subtract your expenses from your income, and that gives you an idea of how much money you're making.
And the payoff is just way better. If we put let's say we put 5 hours in and we can get a small deal out of it, but one of these big deals takes us 30 hours. Okay, so it's 6 times more work to and these are fully made up numbers, but it's 6 times more time to find one of these big deals and find a great deal. But if that big deal pays you 20 times more, it's way more worth it to go after one of these big deals. So it really is just learn it once, learn the underwriting, learn how to do these deals. And I'm sure that you learn new things every day. You run into new costs, but that's all part of small failures here and there and learning there. So now, how do we approach someone and say, "This is what I do. This is what I know how to do. Will you buy?" Let's say I found a deal today. How do I talk to someone? How do I be confident enough to go up to someone and say, "I underwrote this deal. It looks good to me. Will you bring $1,000,000 to the 2,000,000, $5,000,000 to the table to buy this thing?"
You don't
What
need to
is
be
it?
you don't need to be confident. You just need to call somebody like me and say, "I think I've got a deal. Are you interested in taking a look?" And I'm going to say, "Sure, send it to me." And
Mm.
I may come back 5 minutes later and say, "You have no idea what you're doing. It looks like crap. Not interested." Or I may say, "Yeah, this looks pretty good. Let me send it to my underwriting team and we'll get back to you." And who knows, a day or two later, I might call you up and say, "Hey, I think we can make this work. Let's talk about how we can partner on this."
So we need to find guys like you that are doing these big deals. And just curious, where are you buying?
Most of our properties are in the south and southeast. So we have properties in Texas, we have properties in Kansas City, we like Atlanta, we like North and South Carolina. So those states along the Sun Belt, the Rust Belt that we really like.
There you go. There is at least one guy, one group who is buying these huge buildings. If you can go find a great deal in one of those areas and bring it to them, you could get possibly 100 grand, or you could get equity in one of these buildings. And heck, if you get 100 grand and you find two of these per year, it's probably more than your job is paying you right now to do that. And you're learning super valuable skills to bring to the table, man. So where else can we find guys like you or gals like you that are doing these huge deals?
So, network at your local real estate investor meetup. Network with other
Mm.
investors. People don't realize it, but again, you don't realize it until you start doing it. But there's so many people that are doing the same things I'm doing. Some of them
Right.
may not be doing multifamily. Maybe they're doing self storage. Maybe they're doing mobile home parks. Maybe they're doing RV parks, but they're doing big commercial deals. And we're all over. So start networking at local meetup events. Start networking at real estate investor groups. Go on Facebook and
Mm.
find the real estate
Mm.
investor groups in whatever city that you're considering, because I guarantee you there are two or three big real Facebook groups dedicated to real estate in your city, and just say, "Hey, who's doing the big commercial deals?" And you'll quickly find out who those people are. Bigger Pockets. So if you're not on Bigger Pockets, go on Bigger Pockets, create an account and start doing a search in the commercial forums and the multifamily forums, and you'll start to see all the people in Bigger Pockets that are doing these big deals. So we're all over the place, and you just have to start looking for us and you'll start seeing us everywhere.
Dude, and Facebook is so powerful too. When I found that deal that I was talking about earlier, I found the deal, ran the numbers. The numbers looked good to me. I brought in another investor who said he was confident enough and had the capital put down, showed him a great deal. and he was not in on it. I could have gotten so down and, "Oh, there's no way to pull this off." All I had to do was take the numbers from this deal, not even the property address. Just take the numbers, go Google New Jersey real estate investors, go on that Facebook page, and I put it on the page. I said, "This is what the numbers look like on the deal that I have right now. Is anybody interested in coming in as a capital partner?"
Yep.
People just reached out to me, said, "Yeah, I am looking to do that. I am looking to be a capital partner on this stuff." Is this big real estate for everyone? Or would you still recommend small real estate to someone who wants to start off?
No, it's whatever you're interested in doing. If it's not something, if you think doing these big deals just seems like a pain in the ass, it seems like it would be frustrating and stressful and whatever, then don't do it. You got to do what you enjoy. And I know people that wouldn't touch a multifamily deal if I gave them $10 million. They'd rather be doing self storage, or they'd rather be doing single family rentals, or they'd rather be flipping houses. And there's nothing wrong with that. So just figure out where your interests lie. Look, I spent 10 years flipping houses. I flipped 450 houses. So I know that like you can scale in other
Right.
places in real estate. But I would say for anybody that has no idea where to start and is avoiding big deals simply because they're too scared to jump in, they feel like, I have to start small. All I'm saying is that don't feel like you have to start small. If you want to do these big deals, there's nothing stopping you from just jumping right into that.
Yeah, and you don't need the capital as we've already talked about. You don't need
Yep.
the capital to jump into these things. And honestly, I think it's a little less risky when you start doing these bigger deals because you're not going to be the only one looking at the deal. You're going to want to go find someone who already invests in these types of deals and is willing to put the capital forward to go and buy it. You find a good deal, you bring it to one of these guys, it's going through probably at least 5 other people's eyes and brains to see if it is a good deal. So you could be less nervous about buying these deals. So you flipped 450 homes, man. What do you think about the market right now? Should are people still flipping? If they are, is it good? Is it bad? What do you think?
I wouldn't flip houses. I'm not a fan of flipping houses when the market could fall out, the bottom of the market could fall out from under us at any minute. And I really think that while I don't know what's going to happen, maybe we're headed towards a recession, maybe we're not, maybe it'll be a big one, maybe it'll be a little one. I don't know. But I do know that the possibility for prices to drop rapidly over the next several months is there. It's
Mm.
possible that we're going to see 5, 10, 15, 20% declines over the next 6 or 12 months. Not saying it's going to happen. I don't know if it's going to happen, but for the first time in about a decade, I can say it's looking, there's a possibility of that happening. And as somebody who's pretty risk averse,
Mm.
I don't like a lot of risk. Just the fact that there's a chance of that happening right now, I'm preferring to stay away.
You heard it here first, but you heard it here. This is Jay Scott, literally the author of it's the book on flipping houses or flipping homes.
Flipping houses.
Literally, the guy who wrote the book on doing it is saying right now probably not the best time to do it. And obviously, all markets can differ from area to area, but
Now,
might right.
here's something I will say. Just because now's not the time to be flipping houses, for anybody out there that's thinking, I want to flip houses, now's as good a time as any to learn how to do it. Now's as good a time as any
Mm,
to start building up your credit and saving money and meeting people like lenders and appraisers and real estate agents and potential
mm,
partners. Start going to meetings, start reading books, start doing all the things you're going to need to do so that when the day comes that the economy is a little bit more stable and you think, okay, now I'm ready to start, you're not starting from scratch. You're not starting from zero. Spend the
right.
next year preparing yourself so that if a year from now the market's right to do it, you can hit the ground running.
You can still take action right now, do the little things
Absolutely.
that build the knowledge base for you, and then you need 3 things in real estate: time, capital, and knowledge, realistically. You build
Yep.
the knowledge base up, you get the time, you're just gonna have to go find the money when it's time to come. If you start from scratch, when things start to get good, you're already behind the ball. You need to get going right now if this is something that you wanna build for yourself. Now, Jay, another area I wanna hit on is and it's a book that you wrote. is estimating rehab costs. And obviously, that book with the prices that are in there, like time has gone by and areas are different. So the prices are up and down. But the overall concepts that are in those books stick pretty true at looking at everything on a price per square foot basis and what you can pay for things. How does knowing your costs, your rehab costs on a flipping business, how does that correlate to success in the flipping business if you're really down and in your numbers on that?
Yeah, a lot of people ask me, so are the numbers in the book still correct? And what I like to say is, yeah, there are some numbers in the book, but that's not what the book's all about. The book isn't
Yeah.
there to tell you this is how much this costs, this is how much this costs. The purpose of the book is really to lay out a step by step methodology for you to figure out what it costs to renovate a house. So it starts
Mhm.
with basically the 25 components that every house consists of. And it's everything from on the interior, you have things like the plumbing, the electrical, the cabinets, the flooring, the paint, all of those things. On the exterior, you have everything from like the roofing and the gutters and the siding and the landscaping. And then you have things like the big ugly stuff like foundation issues and mold issues and termites. And it basically covers the 25 areas that you need to be familiar with. And then for
Right.
each of those areas, the book talks about how to do an inspection on each of those parts of the house. Because I remember the first time I walked into a house and I'm looking around and I'm like, I don't even know what I'm looking at here. What should am I looking at the paint? Am I looking at the cabinets? If I'm looking at the cabinets, what should I be looking for? I have no idea. I know I'm supposed to be looking at stuff, but I just don't know what. The book
Right.
basically tells you step by step, this is what you look at, this is how you do inspections, this is how you determine if something's working or not working. If something's not working or something needs to be replaced, here are all the different potential line item tasks that you may want to consider. So if for some reason the hot water heater is not working, well, maybe it's a pressure release valve, maybe you need a new hot water heater. Here it is, here's the 5 different line items that you should be looking at to determine what you need to replace. And then it tells you this is how you go figure out the labor and the materials cost to replace that. So by the time you get through the book, it's a spreadsheet of 25 major components and then a couple hundred different
Mhm.
subtasks under each of those that you can learn when you walk through a house. These are the couple hundred things I need to look for. And if I
Mhm.
need to replace them or fix them or repair them, whatever, here's how I figure out the labor and the material cost to do that. Then you add it all up, and that's the cost to renovate the property. But the
Right.
goal of the book isn't just to say, hey, that property is going to cost you $18,250. That's not something a book can tell you how to do or tell you. It's not something a book can tell you, but it
Right.
can tell you the methodology for doing that.
And how to figure it out for yourself, man. I remember, dude, my first building I ever bought was a 4-unit building, condemned building, just so old, so torn down. I remember walking through with that book and not looking at the prices, but
Yep.
looking at, all right, I need to take a look at this. Let me write this down. Let me go look at what prices are looking like online. Let me bring 3 contractors here at the same exact time, have them bid it out for me what this is going to cost. And just mapping everything out made that process go so much more smooth, man. So
Yep.
it's these little things, right? Reading the books and knowing these things and having them as little tools in your tool belt. So when it is time, because I read this book and all these books before I bought my first property, I had all the tools. I knew that there was something I could go to if I had a need for it. And when it came up, I went to it there. And now I'm curious because I have not read Recession Proof Real Estate Investing. What are how can we have a recession-proof asset?
So the whole purpose of that book is basically to teach the reader about how economic cycles work. The
Mm,
fact that the economy goes up, the economy goes
mm,
down, it happens in cycles. There are reasons why it happens, and there are ways that we can not necessarily predict exactly when they will happen or how bad they will, but how we can look at the data that's going on around us, look at the metrics that are being released by the government and other agencies to determine where we are in the cycle. And then, regardless of where we are in the economic cycle, there's going to be some optimal investing strategies that we can employ. There are also going to be some investing strategies that we should stay away from.
mm,
And just like I said, right now is not a good time to be flipping houses. For anybody that reads recession proof real estate investing, they know where we are in the economic cycle right now. And they know for where we are in the economic cycle right now is probably not a good time to be flipping houses. At the same time, they know here are the two or three or five strategies that are good to be doing right now, given where we are in the cycle. And then what we should be thinking about for 6 or 12 or 24 months from now when we're in the next
Mm,
part of the cycle. So, really,
mm.
that book isn't about being recession proof necessarily, but about changing your strategy for every part of the economic cycle so that you're maximizing your profits and minimizing your risk.
I love that. And obviously, we can't know exactly where we're at, but we can make good assumptions as to what the market has been doing and where we see the market going and economic indicators that we're seeing out there. And we could see if we're at the top of this peak that's about to drop down. Yeah, we don't want to be doing flipping up here
Yep.
when we finish in 6 months or 4 months, whatever it may be. And the market, we thought it was going to do this. Why would you ever buy a flip there? I love that. Perfect to know. Last and final questions, two questions that we have here. Jay, what is one actionable step that our listeners should take today on their path towards financial freedom?
Every day, meet somebody new.
Mm,
Every day make an effort to go and introduce yourself to somebody, to go to an event and say hi to somebody that could end up being a vendor, a partner, a mentor, a coach, whatever it is. I find I'm an introvert, and so it's hard for me to meet people.
mm,
My wife told me 15 years ago when I started in this business, she's like, if you want to be successful, you got to get out there. You got to be willing to act extroverted, even if you don't feel it.
mm.
And so 15 years ago, I started making an effort to every day try and meet at least one new person, even if it took me out of my comfort zone. And a lot of the success that I've had over the last 15 years has been based on the fact that I have surrounded myself and met a lot of amazing other people. And yeah, if I had to recommend one thing to anybody, it would just be every day meet at least one new person, because you never know who could be that person that ends up being your next partner that you do $50 million worth of deals with.
And that may seem like something that is intimidating at first, going and meeting new people. But if you set that as a goal, 100%, if you set that as a goal, day one is going to be awkward talking to someone new. Day two is, and I'm not saying it's going to be awkward. If it is awkward, day one is going to be awkward. Day two is going to be awkward. Day three is going to be less awkward. Day four, less awkward. It gets easier and easier because I find myself to be a bit introverted as well, but I also force myself to go and talk to new people and have conversations with people.
Yep.
It's an amazing goal, an amazing tactic to have yourself. Last question here, Jay. What is one question that you wish I would have asked, or one topic that you wish I would have covered? And how would you have answered that question, or how would you have expanded upon that topic?
So you didn't ask the biggest mistake I've ever made.
What's the
And
biggest mistake you ever made?
good question. So, biggest mistake I ever made was not holding enough properties early on. I loved flipping houses when I started doing it. I loved getting these big checks at the end of every deal. And because I was getting big checks at the end of every deal, it never occurred to me that I should be keeping more of these properties. I look back, and if I would have kept like even a quarter of all the houses that I had flipped, I'd probably have another 15 or $20 million in my pocket right now. You make money in real estate by holding long term, and every time you sell, you're probably going to pay taxes, or you're going to incur taxes. Even if you can push them off a little while, you're going to incur taxes, and taxes will crush you long term. So I would encourage anybody out there that's listening, hold on to at least some of the properties that you're buying. Don't sell unless you really have to sell, because at the end of the day, you're going to regret every property you ever sold.
Man, I really love that. And honestly, listening to Bigger Pockets, reading Bigger Pockets, reading Rich Dad Poor Dad, all the books, all the knowledge, all the education I put into myself before starting to invest got me straight out of the gate in the mindset of every property I buy, I want to buy it to keep it forever.
Love it.
And like it's gotta be a good cash flow, it's gotta pay for the debt. And you know that over time, even if it's only if the market's going up 3% per year, over 30 years, man, that thing is gonna be worth a hell of a lot more than I bought it for right now. Any property, I don't even care if the market is super inflated right now. If you buy any property right now, what do you think, Jay? If you buy any property on the market right now in 30 years from now, is it going to be worth more?
In 10 years from now, it's almost certain to be worth more. I'm not saying
Right.
every case. If you bought property in Detroit in the early 80s, it's probably still worth less than when you bought it. There are going to be areas where you could get unlucky. You have a major employer or industry that gets crushed, or people move out for some reason. But in most places around the country, most houses around the country, if you hold for 10 years, it's going to be worth more in 10 years than it was today.
Fully agree, man. And you realize that early, you get your properties, especially if you could start getting in with it does get a little tricky if you start working with partners, which is why if you're putting capital in, especially you want to find a partner that is on the same wavelength as you that hey, I want to hold this thing for a long time. It makes
Yep,
sense to hold this for a long time.
absolutely.
Get on that, man. But great information today. I know the listeners got a ton out of this. Jay, where can my listeners or watchers find you online?
Yeah, if you go to www.connectwithjscott.com, that'll link you out to everything. And probably the most interesting thing that people might want to know about is I have this newsletter completely free. I put it out every Tuesday, basically talk about all the stuff I'm seeing in the market, macroeconomics, housing stuff, a long article every week on some topic that people tend to really like. So check out my newsletter, subscribe to my newsletter, and but yeah, connectwithjscott.com.
Fantastic, man. We really appreciate having you on. From the Financial Freedom Fast podcast, this is Jay Scott, and we are signing off.